Eastern Michigan University, a campus filled with life, happiness, and a great student body. What many people tend not to notice is the variety of examples of architecture within Eastern's small campus. Many buildings on campus date back to the early 1900s, with buildings like McKinney, Quirk and Prairie Herald. Throughout the history of this university, there has been buildings erected to fit the demands and style of the campus, and one building that has done just that is the Quirk Building. Quirk was built in 1958 and housed many departments, including the Fine Arts Department as well as Theater and Communications. Needless to say, it's a historic piece of Eastern Michigan's campus. The building itself was built in two pieces, originally the Quirk Theater and Spongberg. They were joined together during the building's renovations in 1985 to make one, Quirk Spongberg. Quirk Spongberg has a total includes the two theaters, a black box lab theater, several offices, college departments, a television and radio lab, and a scenery and costume making section. Spongberg houses a lot of the classrooms, and Quirk houses the majority of the acting and television spaces. When first entering the building, you would have no idea that they were in fact built at separate times, but we will explain that in more detail shortly. Let's first take a look at the structure from the outside. At first glance, the exterior of the building looks odd to the average viewer. There seems to be some sort of large structure extruding through the main floor roof. Interesting. Next, the observer would notice that the building appears to only consist of one floor, a seemingly relatively small building for a college campus. What we are seeing extending from the roof is what is known as a fly space or fly tower. This type of construction is common in many theaters and is a great asset to the theater program. A fly space is a large area above the stage with a system of ropes and pulleys that allows the players to quickly and easily move objects such as scenery or curtains. This happens to be a larger fly tower than most theaters have, contributing to the building's interesting shape. Now that we've had a good look at the outside, let's get a good look at the inside. We all know what classrooms tend to look like, so we will move on to the theater and special annexes. Quirk Theater consists of 381 seats, making a decent-sized theater in comparison to Spongberg. Quirk's theater has a proscenium stage which allows for the use of the fly tower to create more interesting set designs, while also creating a more efficient performance. Spongberg Theater is slightly smaller than Quirk Theater, as it consists of 202 seats, offering a more personal feeling to a play or performance. It contains a modified thrust stage, which puts performers closer to the audience for an even more personal experience. As we mentioned, the building has a black box theater with an audience maximum of 50, which creates the personal feeling and also allows for different types of performances. For instance, each year there's a festival for one acts or solo performances by Eastern Michigan students. After many years of fundraising and gathering support, the Quirk building was eventually renovated and thus Spongberg Theater was added. There were many people who contributed to making this building come together through individual donations, and their names can be seen on tiles throughout the lower section of the building. Many of the plays performed on these stages are faculty written and produced, but some student works, as many as 15 per year, are used as well. It's been the hub of the theater department for a long time, and this can be seen in many pictures and plaques located throughout the building. Spongberg Theater is named after the president of the university, Harold Spongberg, who was in office from 1965 to 1974. This was a time of immense pressure as this was the height of the civil rights era. During his time, President Spongberg sought to increase student enrollment, and that is exactly what he did. Within the first year of his reign, there was dramatic growth in enrollment of students. Spongberg had a massive impact on the school's success with higher education as well as athletics. One thing that was well known was that Spongberg would often attend forensics tournaments and cheer on Eastern competitors. Perhaps this is the reason the building is named after him. Quirk Theater is named after Daniel L. Quirk, who was a large player and founder of the theater movement in Ypsilanti. His work in creating funding and support for the theater program is the reason the building bears his name as a token of his work. One thing that is clearly seen when walking through the halls of Spongberg is the numerous trophies and plaques dedicated to EMU's forensics team. which has been a force in the nation for some time. Dr. Henry Aldridge has been a professor at Eastern Michigan since 1972. He was the head of the film program at Eastern for some time and has been an important figure in improving the department and expanding education. We met with Dr. Aldridge to get the inside scoop of what the building was like and how it has changed into what it is today.
My name is Henry Aldridge. I'm a professor emeritus of film studies and electronic media at Eastern Michigan University. I started in September of 1972 and retired 2.5 years ago, so I taught in this building for 39 years. The building was very similar to the way it is now, with a couple of exceptions. The space that we are in now is an enclosed theater now, but it was an amphitheater. It was open to the outside. And so a roof was put on and the windows were closed on either side, and it was made into this performing space. That's one big difference. The other big difference was that the main theater, the Sponberg Theater, the Quirk Theater, excuse me, had limited fly space and limited rehearsal space. So additional rehearsal space and storage space for the props and scenery was added in the 1980s. So those were two big additions to the building. Well, my favorite memory is the fact that when I came here, we taught all of our electronic media courses out of the Quirk TV studio. We had no classroom, we had no screening space, we had no space for the WQBR, the radio station, so everything was done from that facility. When I came here, it was a black and white production facility, and we had so few light units that you could hardly see an image on the screen. So the first thing that I did was to ask for additional light units for Quirk TV, which we still have, by the way. So my favorite memories of the building are just the hardships of what we had to deal with when I came here. The building was actually built in two parts. This section here was built in 1958 when the department was split off as a separate department. It was part of the English department, and the speech department became its own freestanding department with this facility. And then it was quickly determined that it wasn't big enough, and so an additional structure was built next door. And if you go out into the hallway, you'll see that there's this strange kind of little connection between the two buildings. They don't quite fit together properly, and that's why. And apparently there's also a kind of a secret corridor down in the basement there where you go through a little door in the men's room and you can actually get into this part of the building underground. I've never done it, but that's what I hear. One of the things I really enjoyed about working in this department was the fact that we have essentially 3 different programs within one department: electronic media, film studies, theater, and then speech communication. And I think it's really important because, for example, if you're going to do dramatic television, where are you going to get your actors from? So, and how are you going to learn about staging and lighting and costuming and all those things? Professor Dameron has a background in both things. And I think it's really, really helpful to have that kind of cross-fertilization. So it's something I always liked about what we were doing here, absolutely.
So here you have it, the history of one of Eastern Michigan University's finer standing structures. It's a place many students call home and has been a starting point for students since its construction in 1958. Overall, Quirk Sponberg is a familiar building. It has its old, it has its new, but it has a place in our hearts nonetheless. Stop by sometime and check out the building where the back is the front and the front is the back. But hey, you be the judge.